This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace therapeutic services of any kind. Please refer to the list of references provided if you need support.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley. I'm Ashley.
I'm Sara Cate.
And today we are going to talk about sex and pleasure.
Woo!
And
that was spicy.
Our relationship to sex, our relationship to pleasure or lack thereof, and really bring this into practical steps, exercises, thought processes that you can immediately use after listening to this. This topic is I'm super passionate about this topic because this is what I do for a living. I help people with this every day. And I have really throughout my whole entire professional career been kind of finding my way towards really speaking on this topic because it has come up so many times as a pelvic health physical therapist. I'm kind of one of the only people that people would talk about these things with. And in a way that allowed them to just kind of say whatever they needed to say. Mm-hmm. And that I think is where this all started for me to have this that and my own experience of me having this big passion towards spreading information that is supportive and helpful, because I think the reality for a lot of us, and Sara Cate and I were actually literally before we pressed record just talking about how it's not that we necessarily have a bad relationship with sex and pleasure. It's just that we don't have one because of many things could cause this to be true, but it could be religion. It could be just parental upbringing. It could be your own comfort in your own body because you haven't had the freedom to express truly what you feel. There could be so shamed out of from a partner abuse. There's so many things that in our society is more common for us to not have a relationship than it is to even have a bad relationship with it, quote, bad relationship. And we're not here to talk about what that necessarily a bad relationship means, because that's a nuance so specific to each of you. Mm-hmm. But we want to provide a conversation around these topics and give you, like I said, some practical things that you can think about, that you can work on, that you can exercises that you can do, and maybe just a different way. My goal is to provide a different way of thinking about these topics in a way where you can start to understand how vital it is to our health and our well-being, and take that forward in this path that you're walking.
Mm-hmm. Well, and with, having a conversation about sex and pleasure, right? I think they're two different things that are deeply connected. Because I think so often our relationship to sex has been one of difficulty. And so even getting to the idea of pleasure seems like such a far cry.
Yeah.
To feel comfortable in your body, to feel comfortable with a partner, to feel comfortable with yourself and your own pleasure. That to me is such an advanced degree of this work, because, and it doesn't need to be, that's the crazy part, but it's become that because even our initial relationship, as Ashley was saying, we could categorize it as bad, or we could categorize it as non-existent. Mm-hmm. The fact that, there's a bunch of adults in the world running around with an inability to talk about sex. Mm-hmm. I find that so often with my clients, right? We can talk about so many things, so many intense, tender, difficult topics. And I still to this day see clients tiptoe around bringing sex into our conversations and into the therapeutic space, because it is just this uncomfortable, taboo, maybe I should know more. Maybe this shouldn't be a problem, and so it really is so layered. And as Ashley was saying, it's so individual. So, as we go into this topic, just, really orienting you to, again, take care of yourself. If this triggers or brings something up, just really being mindful of maybe pausing, taking a break, coming back to the information, if you're curious about it, and that's even the first point of kind of tracking is see what you notice even in your body. Are you feeling resistance to this episode? Are you feeling like, this is not for me? Because that actually could be information when we are we kind of want to shut the door, because to be quite honest, for many people who were, me included, raised in religious homes, sex, you shut the door on sex. There's a big suppression of conversations around it. And so, notice maybe even right now, if you feel something in your body that's pulling you back or making you want to stop. Do you feel a brake pedal right now? That's just a simple way to track, like, hey, am I having some resistance to this? Am I uncomfortable with this? And giving yourself permission to be, this is a complicated topic. Ashley has a practice built around this topic because it's so complicated to some degree. So, watch as we're talking through this today. I think just my encouragement is to remind you to come back into your own awareness, maybe of just your body and what might be percolating or what might be presenting sensation wise to you.
People always ask me, like, what's the first step, or in this topic or anything in general. People are always like, well, what is the first step? What do I do? And to be honest, when I start this work with my clients, what Sara Cate just said is literally the first step, is noticing what you feel when this topic is brought up. And that, like she said, is it tightness? Is it resistance? Is it shame? Is it embarrassment? Is it like giddiness? Is it shyness? That is literally identifying. That is the first step that we do, so that we know where to go from there. Because if we can't even identify what is in like your field, when you like, meaning like what that sensation within yourself, if we are unable, and sometimes it just, might not even have the word, but we can describe it as like dense and heavy. Okay, cool. That's our starting point. That's our jumping off point. And so if that's as far as you get today, that is a huge, incredible step. And I think when we break down topics like this, that can be a little bit more like difficult to talk about. Just having step by step. That's the first step, is identifying that. And if that's all you do, then like, great, good job. But now, like now you have this information about yourself. But I want to, like talk about the history of this a little bit, because it's fascinating. And don't worry, it won't be like a full history lesson, though.
You didn't know what you were signing up for, did ya? History 101 of sex with Ashley.
Though, if you want to talk about the history of like sexological work and like just the development of like sexual health, and specifically in our country, I just spit.
I mean,
did you see that?
No, but sexological does, I feel like it's a word that creates a lot of spit.
Oh my God, it's early.
I am not going to make any sexual jokes about that. But there are some innuendos that go. Oh, I really hope my parents don't listen to this episode.
I hope they do.
All right.
Okay.
So
anyways, back to the
history.
Because, okay, just thinking of anytime we talk about sex and pleasure, I feel like we have to bring in the word erotica. And this is the fascinating part. Eros is the Greek god. This is where this word comes from, is the word eros, which means the expression of love in all aspects. So now think about this for a second. If that's what that word means, the expression of love in all aspects. How did we end up here where erotica just means weird sexual pleasure to a lot of people, and like a very taboo subject that we can't talk about?
Yes.
But it is a philosophy of the expression of love in all aspects of our life. And even when you look at the history of religion in this, don't worry, we're not going super deep. But when you look at the religion or the history of religion and this,
yeah,
the meaning of erotica was to embody or to practice or to be with the highest personification of your highest self, meaning like the highest connection to who you are in your purest form, and the full potential of intellectual ability. That is what the history of this word means. And here we are, full of shame around the expression of sexual arousal. Like, it doesn't make sense. So even in religion, this word was about the expression of who you truly are at your core, and that innermost knowledge of what makes you you. So now, super simple, right? To just like unpack and let go of everything that modern day religion and modern day society has put onto this world to shame us into feeling like this thing that has been around, this isn't new. This word, this way of life has been around since the beginning of time. And as modern humans, in my opinion, we have completely ruined it. And we've robbed people of a way of knowing themselves to the point where when they express love in every form of their life, because what that means, the expression of love in all aspects, does it include intimate relationship? 100%, but it also includes what you do for work, how you interact with your family members, how you interact with your pets, how you interact in the world as a human being with nature and with all of your surroundings. It literally is every single aspect of your life, the expression of love in it. And if we were, so I'm going to link in the show notes a 20-minute video of Audre Lorde talking about this, because she has a really beautiful way of describing this.
Love
and
her.
One of the things that she says is, and I won't get this quote totally correct, but she has a quote about how when we know this feeling within ourselves, when we know how full we can feel within ourselves and within this sense of expressing our love in every aspect, it requires a different level of, she says it like, we require a level of excellence from ourselves. And if we require that level of excellence, it means that we no longer are available for the things that don't serve us. And to require that of ourselves takes a lot. And then what that would mean is that we would require that in others around us. And to go just a little bit further into this, as vulva owners in this society, and she talks about this too, but a person with a vulva, if we are in tune with this part of our life, if we are in tune so much with ourselves that we freely express our love in all aspects, some shit's gonna burn to the ground. She doesn't say that. She doesn't say shit's gonna burn to the ground. She says it more eloquently.
Yeah, I'm a little more eloquent.
But
because then we will demand that of other people in the world.
And
won't put up with it.
That is something that a lot of people fear. And so I don't want, this isn't a like bashing of the patriarchy, although I think we can all know that the patriarchy doesn't serve many people. Serves one type of person. Anyways, we were not going to get into that. This is about how do you find that? And I hope that just understanding what that word means, yes, 100%, it includes sexual expression. Yes. But that is not what the word truly means. And to minimize to that is doing such a huge disservice to the fullness that we can feel in this life and that we are here to feel.
Well, and I think, why I think it's important to disseminate, to break that down, that word down, and to help kind of provide context to things that we run around saying that don't actually have roots or meaning to us. Like we can say, I have we can put things in categories and we can weaponize words to shame people away from those categories or into those categories. And I think that is where people, it's where institutions want to keep things like pleasure and sex and healthy connections and relationships to our own bodies. Because if we are oppressed/suppressed, then, and away from ourselves, then we don't demand that excellence. Then we don't demand other people to rise to our expectations of what we hold ourselves to. Like I can't tell you how many times I've spoken with dear friends, and they say something like, maybe I should just lower my expectations, especially when we're talking about dating. And I'm like, why the fuck would we lower our expectations? Because there aren't people meeting them.
Which those expectations are probably like the bare minimum of just being like in human connection with someone.
And so like, so for me, this is, we have to kind of kick the tires on this thing to see what falls out to some degree, because this is so unfortunately like enmeshed in and on of itself. Like, what is a healthy sexual relationship? Well, that is dependent on the couple. And a healthy sexual relationship.
Well, first it's dependent on your relationship with yourself.
Totally. But like you guys define that. Whoever you're in relationship with. And you define what that means within yourself and what your expectations are of that, right? Like you create the foundation of what that means to you, because it is going to be, there's no way this could ever be universal.
Right.
Especially based on your history, based on lived experiences,
right.
Based on the contexts and the environments and cultures you were raised in. I mean, there are so many things that muddy this water around what healthy sex, healthy pleasure, and let's just even remove the word healthy from that, what sex and pleasure look like. And I think, I would really encourage everyone listening to this episode to go check out Ashley's work, because she has so much incredible information on this, and she's going to obviously share much more with us today. But she just does. She really has so much information around this that I think it can actually diffuse some of the charge. What I was talking about, tracking your body at the beginning of this conversation. Do you feel resistance? Do you feel discomfort? Do you feel excitement, like Ashley was saying? Or is there some, whatever you're feeling in your body when you're noticing kind of like what your impulse is to stay or leave this conversation, if we can kind of pull this all apart and diffuse some of that charge or that energy or that intensity around it, then it does allow for more of a clear connection to yourself. And then by way of that, into any intimate relationship that you embark on, to really know what that means to you without all of this intensity and energy, because that can be really like restrictive. That can like kind of close us down in relationship to this. And so having this information and being able to remove the just like the negative connotations to these words that we have kind of bastardized to some degree.
So let's talk about, well, one of the things, as she was saying, like your relationship with whoever you're in relationship with, and this is kind of like the next level, you have to be willing. You don't have to have everything figured out within yourself, but you have to be willing to learn about yourself to enter into a relationship with somebody else, partners, and have a fulfilling sexual relationship. So this doesn't mean that you have to be quote whole or healed or like all of that bullshit. It just means that if you want to have a more fulfilling relationship with somebody else or other people, you have to be willing to learn from yourself first. And one of the ways we can do that is to get in touch with our relationship with pleasure. And so our sexuality, like she said, there's no way to universalize this. Our sexuality is as unique to us as our fingerprints are. And I'm using sexuality in like the broad term of like everything that encompasses. We could get so like boggled down on like strict definitions, but we're going to use sexuality as like the overall term for like what encompasses our desires, our wants, our needs in terms of this topic. Okay. So, because you could use it interchangeably with erotica, like with pleasure, with all of that. But one of the first steps that you can do is to get to know your relationship with pleasure. And one of the places I like to start people with is how do you define pleasure and how do you define comfort? Because we interchange them a lot unknowingly in our typical daily life. So, and we're always talking about like the five senses here. So an example for me, comfort food is mashed potatoes with a ton of butter on it. Pleasure is cheesecake. Okay. Comfort for me is my big comfy couch that I just like melt into. Pleasure is sitting in my velvet chair with the softest blanket I have. So can you see like the difference there? There's two differences. I find joy in each of them, but comfort is not pleasure. Pleasure is not comfort, if that makes sense. And I'm talking about here's another example that is a really nice way if you want to bring in more pleasure to your life is after you shower, do you use the regular lotion on the counter that you use every day, or do you use that special body oil that's only for quote special occasions, right? Lather yourself up in that body oil every single day. That's like you spending 30 seconds rubbing oil on your legs using the special body oil instead of the regular lotion. That's so simple. There's differences though in our daily life that we can start to connect to really figure out what is the difference in my body. And these are all examples from like my personal life, right? So I do that. I stopped saving the oil for like only after I shaved my legs to using this body oil every day because it's so luxurious and makes my skin so soft. And instead of the lotion, which also hydrates my skin, but it's just not as fun. It's fine.
I'm proud of you, Ashley Zimmerman. Well, and can I just distill it down a little bit more and ask you a question?
Totally.
How would you say, so for somebody who's listening to this right now, and we can, I love the comparisons that you're creating between like the luxurious, decadent, whatever you want to call it, but like this sensation of, wow, this is like way more pleasurable and this is way more comfortable. How can you give an example of how you sensation wise experience comfort compared to pleasure?
Totally. So yes, I can. And keep in mind, this is my experience, right?
This is
so
not
like,
blanket statement, but this is, I just think to kind of produce a little bit more opportunity to work with it in their own bodies.
Totally. Yeah. So when I think of, let's use the food example. Cause I am very food motivated. And
she literally just told me this, I'm not going to say it, but she did something and she was like, well, because food was involved. So I went.
And that is irregular.
Things matter.
So here's in high school, I was bribed to be part of the cross country team because not even the girls coach, one of the guys coaches was like, I'll bake you a strawberry pie.
So you would run?
So he would make me a strawberry pie every season if I was part of the team.
Committed.
Anyways, food motivation.
Yes.
Is where we're at. When I eat mashed potatoes, the comfort, so we're going comfort versus pleasure. Okay.
Mhm.
So when I eat the mashed potatoes, what I feel in my body is like something wrapping me in like a big, like I'm being held, like I am being like wrapped up in somebody's arms and I'm safe.
Mm. And would you say safety feels like a settling
Rest.
somewhere?
Yes. Yeah. So like, that's what I feel like, that sense of like, if you've ever been like, it could be when you like plop down on your couch or like a big comfy chair or your bed at the end of the day and you get that big, like, there's like
You're
that, like,
supported.
yes, there's that sense of relief. There's that sense of, I can just like let go and I'm like here and supported. And that's coming, again, it's coming from food, but those are the sensations that food elicits within me, versus when I eat the cheesecake.
I picture you going,
that's what I do. There's like a little dance. And I'm probably at some point like, like,
I have heard her do that. Typically around our coffee.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's more of an effervescence to it. There's more of an excitement to it. And so I would say like the two, when you're describing these, what I'm hearing you say is comfort is actually a settling down, like an energy moving down in your body.
Yes.
And pleasure, it's kind of the energy
like
moving
the
up.
Rising of my, I want to say excitement. I also want to say like expression of like, how do I describe that? It's like a rising of the expression of my joy.
Yeah. Energy. It's like, it's bubbling out.
Yeah. And we have had a conversation about the tie between excitement and anxiety and all of that stuff. So if you want to go back and listen to that, I didn't want to say excitement and have somebody have a negative connotation about that. It's like the good excitement. It's the uptick in my nervous system that feels good. It feels, to me, feels really lovely and expansive. Right. And that comfort brings me down into more of a grounded connection, if that makes sense. Now, I use that word grounded because when we can get into a situation where excitement brings us out of our grounding, and that's like another topic. I don't mean that. I don't mean that this excitement and my expression is bringing me out of the grounding of who I truly am when I say grounded.
Yeah. And I think, I think what you're kind of speaking to is like how anxiety and electricity are dissociative. Yes. And pleasure is still a very body connected space when you're talking about, because pleasure is the expression of what I'm feeling in my body, but it's not making me leave my body. Yes, I'm not getting so overwhelmed by it that I have to click out. And I think, unfortunately, when we're talking about this, when people report, how often have you heard someone tell you about like this crazy animalistic sexual chemistry that they have with somebody that burns, and it burns quick and it burns out fast. Right. And so we're not talking, that's a different, that isn't embodied pleasure. That is more of that kind of charge, high intensity. I can't even stay in my body because it's so much. And where Ashley is really talking about this interplay of being able to stay with yourself, which I think is an important distinction here, is that really embodied pleasure comes from this deep knowing of I'm safe and can enjoy this. Yes. Yeah. And I can be with myself in this and then lead my partner or partners or whatever it might be to this place with me because I know it and I know that I'm okay in it and I'm safe in it. Yeah. And so this is, it's to make that distinction too, that this is like something that keeps you close to yourself, not further away. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So with this exercise, this is what it is. You take a sheet of paper, your notes section in your phone, wherever, so you can write it down or keep your thoughts organized. Write down comfort and then write out the 5 senses. And then on a separate sheet, separate note, write pleasure and then write out the 5 senses. And this exercise can be modified to do with a partner or partners. Yeah. But I highly recommend that you start with yourself, because everything I've talked about in terms of pleasure the smell. So like for smell for me, it's like lighting my Palo Santo or favorite candle, or like using my favorite essential oils, something like that I really love to smell. There's different scents, right? Like there's a scent, there's some essential oils that I use at nighttime, which like brings me back to comfort, right? There's certain essential oils that elicit that different like connection to pleasure, right? So this is so different and so unique to each of us. But the goal of this exercise is not to make you jump from like, I don't receive or experience pleasure to I'm all of a sudden 100% comfortable in my sexual pleasure. This exercise is meant to show you and to help you feel and experience daily, tiny little bits of daily pleasure so that your body can connect into what that feels like for you. Because when you can feel what that feels like for you, it is different for everybody, then it becomes easier and you have more of an in with yourself. You have that trust built up of like, okay, I can sit and eat this cheesecake and be in this like blissful moment. I can rub this body oil on my body every time I take a shower. And it's like me really nourishing my body and feeling so good about it. And then I can return to that feeling when and if I choose to with somebody else part of it. And I know where my safety boundaries are. I know where I can guide somebody in, and I know where I'm not quite ready. But until we experience, Audre Lorde talks about this too in that clip that so it's 100% worth the 20 minutes of your time. Like I cannot say it enough. Watch it 8,000 times. I probably have. I probably listen to it once a week or more. But until we feel that fullness of the depth of joy that we are capable of feeling, we won't know how to move forward in the comfort of a receiving pleasure, like out in the rest of the world. So start with yourself, start with those tiny little moments of daily pleasure, because they're available to all of us. And remember, the word itself means the expression of love, joy, pleasure, whatever word you want to use in that space, in all aspects, not just sexual. So we've got to take that pressure off. The word pleasure has all of a sudden become this, like, it's only connected to sex.
Hypersexualized.
Which is not the case at all. And again, if we try to jump from point A to point B and skip that middle section of us really knowing what it feels like in our body, that's when we crash and burn hard. And if you've done that, I've done it. If you've done that, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that this is something to shame. It just means that, like, okay, now I know that my body needs a little bit more attention, and your body deserves that. You deserve to know what that feels like. We all deserve to know what that fullness feels like within ourselves. And, speaking from personal experiments, well, that too.
I was going to say, well, I don't think that's totally invalid. Personal experimentation.
From personal experience, the depth of joy that you feel with yourself makes the depth of joy that you are able to invite somebody else into with you so much more, accessible, so much more intimate and like worthy. Like you're being able to have the fullness within yourself automatically helps you determine who's worthy to experience that with you or not. And so that in of itself helps us make different decisions in all areas of our life. Because remember, this is across the board, not just sexual.
Well, and I think that we unfortunately as a society on all levels, and I think this is cross-culturally, I think this is not specific to any gender orientation or sexuality. Like, we have really, because of the distortion of these words, we have been given very few unless you were raised by, you know, some really liberated, open parents. We have been given very few opportunities to be very connected to what sex, pleasure, those things mean to us. And, you know, just because we become adults all of a sudden, and we somehow have the stipulations removed and the confines of maybe our childhood experience removed, and we become adults, and we can be consenting adults in the world and having sex, it doesn't mean that we then have a relationship to sex because we somehow now have permission to have it.
Right.
And so, and I sit with so many people who, as we explore this and as we kind of enter into conversations about these topics that Ashley and I are speaking to today, you know, there is kind of these light bulb aha moments of like, I don't actually really even know what my relationship is to this thing. Right. And that is the beauty. And that, as Ashley is like so clearly naming, is that is like actually the hope, is that you get to then explore what your relationship to sex is. Now, I know this is highly complicated. You know, I work specifically with all female identifying humans, and what we know about sexual assault and sexual trauma is very, very, you know, unfortunately too common of an occurrence. And so it is very difficult when we have also these adverse experiences with this thing to be able to decide and reclaim what is my actual relationship to this before it was taken from me, or before it was altered, or before it was changed. And
how to repair it if it has been taken, like how that repair within
process.
Yourself.
Yeah. And so like we are very, you know, Ashley and I are acutely aware that this is, and this is why I love that she used examples of like really simple daily pleasures, because this doesn't have to be, you know, how do you orgasm, self connection, all of these conversations, which is where it becomes hypersexualized of like, do you masturbate? I mean, the culture is like taking this pleasure principle back, but it's not actually having conversations about what healthy and supportive and safe, you know, embodied, like I was saying, embodied pleasure is, where it's like, how do you just find these moments of like self-connection where it's like, yeah, oh wow, I actually really enjoyed that thing. It felt really nice to eat that. Let's just go back to the example, eat that piece of cheesecake. Like it was so great for me to experience that, to taste it, to enjoy it. And you know, that's where that reclamation comes in, because once we start doing those small, subtle, tiny little pleasures, we really are increasing our capacity, as Ashley was saying, to start to explore those that are connected to sex and that are connected to these other parts of our expression, even our expression of joy and love in the world, not even related just to sex, but some people, I mean, I think, you know, Ashley and I've talked about this before, that like not being our fullest expression in the world can be a pattern of low self-worth. You know, not really opening and being our creative, wild, and passionate selves, whatever that might be, not sharing that in the world because it feels too much. It feels like too much. And so the more that we do these little tiny connections back to self, what is this? Do I enjoy this? Am I feeling that kind of like bubbling of energy, or am I feeling that settling, whatever it might be? When you play around with that in your own body, it then gives you access and entry points into these greater conversations over time. It's like working this new muscle. And so I think I do a lot of sexual trauma healing work. And a lot of that comes from simple moments of just noticing the warmth in their skin and being able to just enjoy that, you know, like the sun on their skin, rather than it being, okay, are you opening yourself back up sexually, to like heal this trauma? No, like that's way too far, way too fast. And so starting to do these explorations of feeling those simple pleasures in our soma, in our somatic system, to be able to say, oh, I can handle that. And over time, you build that fortitude. And as Ashley was saying, a strong awareness around where it is that you want to invite somebody in.
Yeah.
and where you want to engage in the world.
Yeah. The other thing that this allows you to do is, and we've alluded to this, maybe haven't like fully described it in this conversation. But sex is what we are typically taught is a very heteronormative description of what sex is. It's penis and vagina penetration, and that is sex. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
100%.
So what this allows you to do is to write your own truth about what sex is to you. And that is ever evolving. It's ever changing. And there might be different parts to that definition that get brought in depending on like what partner you're with. And that's okay. As long as both people on the table are negotiating this relationship, like you get to have your definition, they get to have their definition. And then together you decide how those meld into like the flow back and forth between the two of you or between the three of you or however many partners are involved, so that's the other thing, that when we have this awareness within ourselves, it allows us then to have the awareness and the knowing and the reminder to ourselves that we get to choose what sex is to us, and how that changes, when it changes, who it changes with, who you might want to go deeper into this with, who you don't want to, you know what I mean? So like if we bypass knowing what it feels within our body and where that safety lies, again, like Sara Cate just said, that's too far, too fast, too soon, too much. It's too much, and it's not sustainable. And it doesn't, again, when we think about like the history of the religious and philosophical definition of these words, it is that highest intellectual knowing that's within us. That's us telling us. And I find it so peculiar that like we're talking about this as if it's like this big like liberation that we're finding. And in some aspects it is, because we've been so suppressed, but it's like, this is just being human. This is what home. Yes, like this is what we were put here for. And the world has fucked it up. Religious institutions have fucked it up because they have put these ideals on us that shame us into keeping us away from this intellectual knowing, this deep wisdom within us.
And power.
Yes.
I just like, I think so often it's this like we have such a disempowerment around this conversation.
Yeah.
And that's why I think my clients when they come in and they want to talk about it, it's like this curled over. I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe that how do I talk about this? And there's just there's no energy of like, I get to have this and I get to learn what I want and how I need and how to express myself in this. Like there's just this disfiguration.
Yeah.
And this mutation away from ourselves. Totally. In our own wisdom.
And it's, there's a big push. I want to.
She's teetering on the edge, folks. What's she gonna say?
I just don't really love
She'll get it out.
Yeah, I'll get it out. I promise. I don't know how to say this, because truly, do I like seeing female pleasure centered? Yes. However, and this is a big however, the way that we tend to do this historically for anybody who has a vulva is to put pressure to perform on them. We don't actually teach somebody how to find this embodiment within themselves, everything that we've just been talking about. Instead, we say, we're going to snap our fingers and demand that every time I have sex, I'm going to have an orgasm. And that if I'm not having mind-blowing, huge orgasmic sex every single time, that then my partner just isn't satisfying. Or like some bullshit like that. And that is what I hate, because all this does is it takes people further away from their body, because now they're seeking that. They're seeking the orgasm. And when you seek the orgasm, you bypass every single sensation in your body that will likely help you find
so many points of pleasure.
Yes.
along the way.
And if orgasm, now this isn't to say that orgasm can't be a goal of a sexual experience. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is when that is the only thing that you are concerned with, you're bypassing all of the information within you. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a lot of the sex coaches that are out there right now, or like the orgasm coaches, or like whatever they are, they're forcing this pressure on us. And it makes me like, again, it just makes me sad, because we're pushing people into this, trying to make something, what was the word? Universal. That's the word you used, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're trying to make it universal when it's not. It is not. And we can listen. One of my favorite conversations to have is around the anatomy of the clitoris and the anatomy of.
She's incredible. When I know I would consider myself having a pretty strong awareness of my body, and still some of the things Ashley tells me blows my mind.
And so,
because we just weren't taught.
Exactly.
We weren't fucking educated.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, the sex ed conversations that we have in America are trash.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, here's a pad. This is how a sperm makes a baby. Don't do it.
Yeah. Like, if you what's the Mean Girls? If you have sex, you will get chlamydia and die.
Yeah, like that. Like it's so, and so like even as a grown ass woman who has really done a lot to work around my relationship to sex and learn what my own definition of that means for Sara. Ashley, it's on a daily. Like if I were to talk to her about it, I'm like, what? That's a thing. She's just a wealth of knowledge. Anyways, maybe we'll have a whole conversation on the anatomy of the clitoris. I think that would be a fantastic episode.
I think it would be so fun.
We would have diagrams.
Oh, yes.
I think we would have a lot of male identifying listeners.
Well,
shockingly, I do.
Yeah. But, and it's not just, like, without getting too far into it, there are many different kinds of orgasms that you can have. A clitoral orgasm is one. You can orgasm from many different points of contact with the clitoris, not just the head, which is like the common understanding. Anyways, those are like some of my favorite conversations to have. So when I say this, I'm not saying that like, oh, like fuck the orgasm. Like, please do so. Have it. It's great.
If you can.
Yeah. If that is something that you're into and you want, and it's safe in your body in that moment, 100%. But when it becomes the pursuit of only having this quote, mind-blowing orgasmic sex, that's where we falter. And that's where we're putting more pressure on only one side of it. Only one side of it.
And you said a really important word there, Ashley, early on. It was performative.
Yeah.
Like what Ashley is talking about is, in saying it's performative, this cultural kind of movement of mind-blowing sex makes anybody likely involved in a sexual encounter to some degree performing. We have to pretend. We have to enjoy this thing when really it might not be altogether safe in our body to enjoy this thing.
Yeah.
And then we, like Ashley was saying, we bypass all of these markers, both helpful and maybe uncomfortable, that are fun and maybe get us to that point of orgasm, or that are like red flags that are like, I don't want to go past this point. I don't want to go past this point. I don't want to go past this point. Right. And then we're performing ourselves away from what our relationship to this experience is.
Or then we're listening to all the bullshit advice we get about like, we'll just have a glass of wine before, and that'll calm me down.
Oh my God.
Or like just the grin and bear it, or like my partner needs it, so I'm just going to do it. Like, and that, like, so many other conversations can stem from this one. I think the main point,
bring it home, Ashley.
The main reason we are here today is that, one, pleasure is available to you daily and you deserve to feel it. And that truly, I really, really, really encourage you to do, even if you feel really connected to yourself, do that exercise.
Yeah, it's illuminating.
Find where, because also just knowing what brings you comfort. So when you're in a space of like dysregulation or you're feeling a little overwhelmed, you literally have a list of all of the things that bring you comfort. So, and it can be a working list. You can add to it. You can take away like, oh, I used to like that. Don't like that anymore. That used to bring me comfort. Actually, no, that makes me feel more dysregulated. Now I like this. You know what I mean? So the comfort end of that exercise is really beneficial as well, but you deserve to have daily pleasure, and that living your life in the expression of your joy and love is the ultimate, purpose of being human. We're not here to suffer. We're not here to stick to the confines of what people have put us in. And it's available to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
It is 100% available to all of us. And there's support if you need it. Reach out. Like, that's what we're here for. And if you have questions,
we're also here for that.
Slide in the DMs. Yeah, but seriously, people are always like, I don't know if this is TMI, but like, no, it's not. I promise you, if you have the question, I have talked about it a million other times. So,
notice your impulse for curiosity there.
Yeah. Yeah. Just be curious. And there's no stupid question either. Like, if you are curious about it, send the question and let's talk about it. I'm 100% here for that and open to that. And my goal is just that we all find that inner knowing of ourselves and that wisdom, and that we can present ourselves into the world being fully embodied in that, because that's when we experience beauty, the beauty of this life. And we also know that it's not easy, but that's again why we're saying, like, we're here for support. We're here to help you.
This will not be the last conversation we have about sex and pleasure.
No.
You can count on that.
You can count on that.
Well, as always, please like, subscribe, share it. Yeah. The other things that you do.
Ask questions.
Yeah. The other things you do with podcasts. And as always too, if there's topics you want us to chit chat about, we love to hear that. We just, feedback is so great for us. And so leave us the info of the things you want to hear about.
Yeah. Even if it's like a specific thing of like, hey, I'm really struggling with this specific problem. Like, it doesn't have to be a generalized idea. Just a specific. We should have
people do that.
Yeah.
And then we go through them.
Yeah.
That's going to be an episode.
Okay.
Just stay tuned.
Okay, guys. See ya next time.
Bye.